Hey everybody, my name is Preet Banerjee. I'm the host of Spent, where every week I'll be talking to Derek Fung as we dive into the data from some of the largest purchase panels in North America. And this week, we're going to be talking about home improvement sales. Derek, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Preet.
So tell me, what have you been up to in the last week? Have you been eyeing some home renovation projects?
Last week, just buying a lot of stuff.
A lot of
I got
stuff.
got a new gaming PC, been playing around with that, and thinking about buying a hot tub
Don't
for
you live
my
in a
parents'
condo?
I do, but for my parents' backyard, actually. And
Oh, okay.
so been looking into that, but just a lot more buying, a lot more buying.
Okay, well, I think that is the trend. You know, the idea that with people being at home, there should be an uptick in sales for these home improvement retailers. So let's dive into the data and see just how much of an increase we're seeing. So walk us through the overall trend here.
Yeah, so clearly, all the major home improvement companies have been seeing a big uptick as consumers are at home, and thinking about the warm weather. I think a lot of it is driven by, it's patio season coming up, gardening. A lot of the big companies, specifically in the tech space, have announced, like your Twitter and Shopify, that they're going to all be working from home for the foreseeable future. So what we're seeing is a massive uptick in home improvement in Q1. A lot of the big, home improvement retailers, including Home Depot, have announced massive spikes in sales in Q1. But what's crazy and interesting is Q1's actually not usually their best quarter.
Mhm.
When you really think about it, Q1, January to March, it's still very cold. And Q2 is normally their biggest quarter. And so we think it'll be one of their biggest Q2s ever, given that we already started seeing a lot of that purchase start to spike in Q1.
Yeah, it's interesting because there is a seasonality to the sales for these retailers. Just as you said, people wait for the weather to be a little bit nicer and they start thinking about renovation projects both inside and outside the house. But now we also have COVID-19, which has led people to be spending more time at home and maybe setting up home offices as well. So if we take a look here, we're comparing 2019 to 2020 for two of the big four retailers. So Ace Hardware and Home Depot, which is really the market leader, to see the seasonality. And we see that the sales are actually quite a bit higher,
Yeah.
even when you adjust for the seasonal effects, right?
Yeah, I mean, look at that ramp up, right? Look at that slope. Jan to March, it wasn't as obvious, but then you look at April, massive spike, and we're expecting the same thing for May and June as well.
Okay, let's take a look at who's doing the heavy lifting. When it comes to the acquisition of customers or sales in general, who is doing the heavy lifting? Is it the new customers that they're bringing on, or is it the existing customers?
Yeah, definitely a lot driven by the existing. I mean, when you really think about it, how likely are you, you've never really been to Home Depot before and you're going to go in and, I mean, buy a hot tub. Yes, once in a blue moon, maybe you want to go in and buy a hot tub, but I'd say it's definitely those that are either already living in houses versus a condo. There's not much you can do in a condo. Those that have recently moved, those who have thought about doing it for some time and now they have the time. And we'll talk about it in a little bit. There is a big spike in the, in a very specific gender that has been driving a lot of the sales as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, when you take a look at it, I think it's 91% of sales are driven by existing customers. Probably because if you're already handy and you're spending money at these retailers, but now you've got more of either time or incentive to spend money on those projects, to maybe change up your home office, to create a home office or what have you. So it makes sense that it is the existing customers that's doing the heavy lifting. If we take a look at the big four, specifically in the United States, what's interesting to me is that there is a clear relative winner, and that is Menards, which is one of the smaller retails out of the big four.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Menards, they're known for being the discount player out of the four. And in a world where consumers are thinking about saving as much money as possible, it makes a lot of sense that they are leading the charge in terms of growth within the space.
And you guys took a look at the change in market share. So what we look at here is pre-COVID-19 on the left, and then on the right-hand side is the most recent data. So during COVID-19. And it's interesting, Home Depot is the big market share leader at 56% normally. And they've seen a little bit of give back in market share. And what strikes me is that, you take a look at Menards and Ace Hardware. Ace Hardware went from 1% market share to 2% market share. And also Menards is gaining market share as well. And I think a lot of that has to do with the lower cost. If you're sort of the discount brand, certainly you're going to attract people who are trying to save money.
For sure, for sure. This is very interesting when you take a look at this graph here. As I said before, a lot of it is actually driven by women, and there's a big movement around DIY. You go on YouTube in particular, a lot of very interesting videos of things you can do from home, and even platforms like Etsy have seen a ton of growth during this stay-at-home movement.
Yeah, it is. It is interesting. It was a fairly even split before, but it looks like since COVID-19, there has been a shift towards women at now 55% of the acquisition mix. So what does this mean for Q2 earnings? It looks like these retailers are going to have pretty stellar earnings reports for Q2. And it kind of shows us that, during this crisis, there are losers, but there are also winners.
I mean, most definitely. You look at even Amazon, Walmart. Walmart has been clearly picking up steam based on earnings, and sometimes you forget, wow, having physical real estate is important in some of the different types of shopping, home improvement in particular, being one of them. And it'll be very interesting to watch where it goes from here. I think clearly demand is picking up very drastically. The question is, whether or not they're going to be able to keep up, given some of the massive supply chains that are required to keep these stores up and running. And even when you look at Home Depot, last week they announced earnings. They beat on revenue, but actually, weren't able to beat on earnings because they had to make a ton of supply chain investments to keep up with the demand. So Q2 is going to be a super, super interesting quarter to watch in the home improvement space.
Very interesting. Okay, we'll leave it there, Derek, but we'll be back next week looking at some more data. In the meantime, if people want to dig more into these reports, where would they go?
Cardify.ai, and we'll be rolling out a ton of new weekly reports over the next couple of weeks.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Derek. We'll see you next week.
See you next time, Preet.